Humanity is turning the Sangre de Cristo ruins into a vast factory where Element 6 or from Garangaro feeds ever-larger liminal cruisers, new heirs to the legendary Leviathan. The Dominion flagship Prevalitis surrenders, its capitulation broadcast by the Lighthouse and Hope Station's mirror swarm, sparking rebellions across the Empire under the banner, "No more dots, start a sentence." An unknown ally called Greywater ships self-deploying NAV buoys and invites a summit at Nebula Gate 71. The refitted Borrower 2 departs, carrying Earth seeds and a trove of folk songs. Inside abandoned X-ray fortresses, engineers and schoolchildren paint semicolons on the walls, while spore choirs from the crater click in time with lullabies, symbols of war melting into culture. Yet Imperial shards are secretly forging new blades, so Earth holds a long breath, finishing ships, fortifying the lighthouse, and preparing to keep its endless run-on sentence of freedom alive. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The beacon flare that ruptured Jupiter's amber clouds should have been just another classified anomaly logged by tired Dominion patrol bots. But minutes after the data stream stuttered through Relay Arc 779, 3 separate Imperial ministries demanded simultaneous priority analysis. That alone would have set archivists whispering ministries never competed unless the sky was changing color. Yet what truly rattled the chain of command was the source ref tag buried inside the pulse, Earth/Dawnfire/Leviathan. For 3 centuries, the Dominion had stamped that triglyph into every training manual as the cautionary fable, upstart primitives, Colossus ship, grand self-destruct. Closed case, universe calmer for it. Except the beacon's telemetry showed a warfield still hot, and the spectral signature inked across the radio bleed was unmistakable human grav fusion, 30% stronger than recorded before the Leviathan took its final bow. On the diplomatic channels, the hysteria read like showered sparks, impossible, ghost data, fabrication by rebel enclaves. Yet even as committees convened, sub-era monitors kept feeding fresh hits, power surges rippling from Luna's far side, carrier-grade frequency jamming over half a solar quadrant, and a debris plume above Earth whose composition did not match any known Dominion alloys. Something enormous had died in orbit, yes, but something larger had clearly survived to tell the story. Down in the Continental Bunker Plaza, once nicknamed the Granite Cathedral, buried 6 kilometers under what locals used to call the Sangre de Cristo Range. Commander Regent Arden Miles studied those same intel pulses while stale research air hissed around her. She should have been sleeping. The last shift's catastrophe report already spanned 1,000 lines, each one meaning new citizens lost. Instead, she scrolled back to the very first frame from Relay Arc 779 and enlarged the faintest corner pixel cluster. There, hidden amid static, pulsed the same harmony that once powered the Leviathan's impossible gravity drills, a thrumming chord forecast by the original Dawnfire theoreticians, a chord everyone believed had died alongside Captain Elena Vance. Except the chord was louder now, almost joyful, and Arden's throat went tight. Because just 2 decks above, locked behind radiation doors no Dominion spy had yet breached, Project Liminal waited. 5 incomplete hull frames strung like skeletal leviathans across a hangar the size of a small nation, each intended to eclipse even Dawnfire's legendary flagship. Liminal had been stalled 4 years for one of refined grav cores, for one of hope. And now the universe itself was screaming that hope back into her ears. She keyed a secure loop to Chief Engineer Kovaresnik. Wake propulsion. Give me prototype core number 3 online. Yes, I know the coolant nests aren't certified. Do it anyway and burn the paperwork later. Resnick's only answer was a low chuckle, equal parts terror and devotion before the line cut. Arden switched to planetary overview. The Dominion's second mothership carcass still leaked glowing wreckage over the Atlantic Gyre, swarmed by ad hoc salvage skiffs. In Brazil, grassroots republics were already printing coinage that bore Captain Vance's war snarl. In Siberia, orphaned artillery units calibrated ex-Dominion ion cannons skyward just in case the gods came looking for revenge. Humanity was bruised, but bruises fade into scars, and scars remember the geometry of every blade. She pinged the recon net. All functioning observatories cross-linked, feeding live star tracks. Dominion courier waves had indeed retreated beyond Saturn, regrouping around a new flagship of unfamiliar silhouette, sleeker than the previous behemoths, cloaked by umbral fields so dark they ate radar pings for breakfast. That design meant adaptation, and adaptation meant the next assault would not be as forgiving. Forgiving, she muttered, rubbing grit from her eyes. As if tens of millions dead could be called forgiveness. That was the math of apocalypse. If any lungs remained to breathe, strategists dared to call it mercy. Liminal frame, 3, 14% reactor ignition achieved, flashed across her retinal HUD. Resnick was ahead of schedule or lying about coolant figures. Either possibility was a miracle. Still, a frame husk with a baby core was no combat Leviathan. They would need dreadnought ice hulls, bow plates adult planets thick, coil spines tuned to chew gravity and spit collapse. That required Element 6 catalysts whose only regional source lay deep under the scorched X-ray drop site, once known as Ngorongoro Highlands. Worst of all, Dominion fallback governors had reoccupied the crater 3 days earlier, turning it into a makeshift fortress while their empire's long-range pickets sniffed for new human tricks. Arden toggled ground tactical. Colonel Mei Ling's 6th Ranger Battalion blinked amber near Mojave staging, fresh home from the Pacific defense lines. Ground battered but spirits feral. Perfect. She patched through. May, how do you feel about a safari? Weapons still dirty, armor plates cracked, men half delirious. The colonel answered, breathless. Then came slow laughter. We feel alive, ma'am. Send the grid. Coordinates locked. 2 minutes later, updated dropship rosters rolled across 16 screens, while resin printers spat drone schematics loud enough to drown the constant earthquake rumble of Liminal's uphill assembly arms. Outside in darkness, the Rockies trembled harder. No Dominion beam. This thunder was human-born. Liminal Frame 2 lit its core for the first time, and for a heartbeat the mountain's crust thought about surrendering. Deep basalt anchor pylons howled, but held. Their song and anthem no choir would ever match. Arden clutched a railing to steady herself and felt heat blooming in the air vents. She remembered being 10 years old the night the first mothership had arrived and silence had crashed across every screen. She remembered her father sealing the windows with duct tape, as if that thin silver could keep apocalypse outside. She remembered how hope felt like humiliation in those days. Not anymore. She opened a broadcast channel, planet-wide, piggybacking on the same raw frequency Captain Vance had used 13 years earlier, a band once reserved for orbital weather bulletins, now wholly by association. No big speech, just 3 words echoed in every language Earth still dared speak. Stand. We rise. Somewhere over charred Madrid rooftops, a boy who had never seen daylight without smoke raised a cracked violin and played the note everyone recognized from old bootleg Leviathan footage, a single aching E that rose into defiance. In shattered Osaka, fisherwomen uploaded crude schematics for transocean evac barges because broadcast optimism was nice, but bodies needed boats. On the ruins of Houston Spaceport, ex-janitors welded sniper rails onto Dominion Scout drones, painting their chassis with neon scripture. Galaxies bleed like any beast. And beneath 6 kilometers of rock, Arden Miles watched the status bars climb. Frame 3 now 57%, structural lock stabilizing, coolant nests screaming but not failing. Captain Vance, she whispered into the humming dark where ghosts surely lingered, the baby monsters are waking. What came next would be uglier than legend. Messier than hope songs, longer than planners dared model. But the Dominion had made one final fatal assumption. They believed the Leviathan's death was the terminal punctuation on humanity's story. They never understood Earth's grammar. We write run-on sentences, whole galaxies long, lined with semicolons called survivors, commas named chance, conjunctions built of duct tape and rage. And we were only at the end of the first clause. The mountain's granite skin vibrated as Liminal Frame 3 locked its dampers and began the first full-frequency resonance test, a guttural basso note that shivered tool racks off benches and set frost patterns skittering across the inner blast doors. In the command mezzanine, thin hairline cracks raced across a coffee mug before it surrendered, tinkling to dust on the metal grating. Nobody flinched. Gravity crooning was the new lullaby beneath Sangre de Cristo, and every technician now measured time in quakes, 1 tremor for ignition, 2 for stabilization, 3, and only 3, before you grab the fire blankets. Engineer Resnick's voice bounced through the PA, ragged with pride. Her temperature within predictive envelope, pulse amplitude holding at 0.09. That's a live heartbeat, people. Commander Miles thumbed her handcom and patched directly to Ranger Command while half listening to the ragged cheer rolling down the gantry base. May, I know you've got drop accelerators still cooling from the Pacific pushes, but we need your battalion over in Ngorongoro in 5 hours. The Dominion's fortress garrison is heavier than satellite imagery shows. Looks like they melted a kilometer of crater wall into shield domes. Colonel Mei Ling answered between clipped orders to her loadmasters, each syllable pinging with rotor wash static. Spooling thrusters now. We'll take the north rim with tolls, punch a lane for the excavation crawlers. If their point defenses are anything like Morocco's Gully Fort, we'll have to fly low enough to kiss basalt. Copy. And May. Miles softened, just a fraction. Bring them all home this time. Working on it, boss. The channel closed with a thump. Outside, Winter listened at the surface. The Rockies were sheeted in wind-carved ice fields that glimmered faintly from re-reflected orbital fire. Now their ridgelines glowed again as Liminal's exhaust bleed seeped upward through hidden vent stacks, painting the evening snow rosy. Locals across what remained of Colorado called those pillars dragon breath and whispered jokes. The kind that only makes sense when extinction is already in the room, sipping your tea. Kither Edge Relay, 3 million clicks sunward, registered a second burst, not gravity, not Dominion comms, but an encrypted ping from what archivists had once cataloged as Rec. 94b, a somersaulting chunk of the original mothership. Thought inert, now blooming with fresh power signatures. Autonomous salvage squads had jury-rigged its fusion spines, welded radio aerials across half-molten ribs, and proclaimed it the first free orbital township, Hope Station 1. Those same scavengers had evidently scavenged a transmitter too. Their message, once decrypted, was equal parts joyous and terrified. Station hull stable, agri-pods sprouting, but we caught Dominion recon drones painting us. Request anti-beam mirrors, request grain virus patches, request, hell, just send songs. We're flying scared up here. Miles forwarded the packet to Lighthouse Control. Seconds later, the beacon uplink answered with a massed chorus ripped from 10 underground choirs, Vatari overtone whistles, Antarctic throat singers, a Peruvian garage band thumping rusty oil drums, and folded it into the broadcast stream. Out among the ragged satellites, Hope Station's engineers heard the weave of voices swell through their hull plates and wept smoke-stung tears. Earth's first interstellar lullaby. In the Dominion's U-Freight command spire, Vice Praetor Simox traced those same audio harmonics on a glassy holopad, knuckles whitening around stylus. Find the source, or burn it, he hissed at his adjutant. Song is more viral than plague. Orders rippled down chains of obedience, but each link was now corroded, budget wrung dry by earlier defeats. Half the logistics AI stuck in looped self-diagnostics after the Leviathan's pulse disruption. Raiders once considered scum were now the Empire's patch kits and puzzle glue. Administrators pulled them in, promised them salvage rights, hurled them at the ever-growing list of uprising fire points. Prestige fleets, what few remained, were held in reserve for the coming push, a trivector offensive aimed to decapitate the Concorde before Liminal could field more than 2 operational hulls. Praetor Simox still believed that plan sound. What he hadn't accounted for was how quickly humans fed on myth. Every rumor of a new Leviathan birthed a dozen volunteer regiments and 100 smuggler covens running black market cobalt to the Rockies. And myths, unlike lasers, didn't need line of sight. Ngorongoro Highlands, a crater ring veined with glowing red trenches where Dominion plasma drills had glassed farmland into slag. Ranger Battalion dropships surfed dawn thunderstorms, stealth skins wicking water straight into aft vents, sonic booms disguised as thunder. Mei Ling rode the lead skiff, visor HUD displaying target grid but overlaying a translucent family photo in the corner, her twin sons back in bunk school under Munich's geodome roof. She tapped the image thrice for luck. The troop bay jolted as autocannons stitched the hull, but composite laminate held. Hammer teams, 2 minutes. Carve me a door, she barked. Tail ramps fell. Rangers spilled like liquid iron, exosuits trimmed with scrapyard plating, none painted alike, all etched with the same sigil, 3 horizontal scratches symbolizing Leviathan's claw mark on history. They sprinted beneath shield flicker, jamming spikes firing from spinal mounts. When the first Dominion tower tried to target them, its auto turrets gurgled static, firmware ate alive by May's EW weasels. Shrapnel flowers opened. Basalt dirt fused to glass around flickering shield emitters. Within 800 seconds, the north rim defenses were scrapped. Excavation crawlers rumbled in, chewing blasted soil, extracting glittering Element 6 nodules by the shovel ton. Every second bucket was slagged by sporadic rail fire from the southern bastions, cost of doing business. Above, rerouted weather drones began seeding rain clouds with cooling salts. Dust hazard for the hull launch had to stay below lethal. When Dominion artillery finally realized the northern perimeter was crippled, May's tail guard lit escape beacons, tight beam pulses guiding dropships home with precious ore. 3 hulls took direct hits on ascent, but the rest punched Atmos and bent course over the Atlantic, streaking west, airborne arteries pumping blood to Liminal's forge heart. Back under Sangre de Cristo, Resnick's teams poured those first handfuls of Element 6 beads straight into Core 3's feed crucible. Purple light chased along conduits. Gravity buffers thrummed a full tone deeper. With each resonance spike, the half-assembled spine around Core 3 knit tighter, composite ribs flexing like a giant waking cat. She would not be battle-worthy for months, but she would live. The forge sang. Welders cried. One even recited the old Leviathan flight liturgy until her mask fogged. At Lighthouse Control, we compiled the latest status digest for public consumption. Ngorongoro operation 73% successful. Casualty index, moderate, liminal frame 3 heartbeat, positive. She, and the board, deleted the footnote about half-functional dorsal plating. Hope admitted scars but not infected wounds. The broadcast concluded with a loop of Hope Station's newborn vegetable beds glowing under jury-rig UV arrays and children chasing each other in what passed for simulated sunlight in orbit. Those images ran on every liberated screen from Detroit's bunker theaters to floating tin islands patched together over the flooded South China Sea. The Dominion jammed the feed twice that night. The Lighthouse AI rerouted thrice. Viewers laughed and started designing their own jamming memes, cartoons of Dominion Praetors tangled in coax cables, grafted onto every street wall before sunrise. Vice Praetor Simox studied those graffiti shards via covert scout cams and felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Not fear, disgust. Humans weaponized defiance faster than we rebuild cannons, he conceded to Commander Vetresh across the Ops hololink. Then he authorized Project Night Glass. The Trivector offensive would advance under masked nebula scatter, deliver synchronized kinetic rods on the Rockies, lighthouse control, and Hope Station in a single dawn. 3 kills, 1 blow, the old Imperial solution. Fleet launch set for 12 cycles. Vetresh, the last Battlesphere Commodore still unblooded since the Leviathan collision, saluted and cut channel. As lights dimmed in the Spire's war room, the Holo kept playing captured human broadcasts. Some tech had forgotten to mute them. A little girl's voice sang off-key about dragons and maple leaves before the stream auto-stopped. Simox tasted ash in his throat and ordered the room dark. T-11 cycles. Liminal Frame 1, codenamed Rook, achieved 92% hull enclosure. Forward weapon arrays still dummies, but comms dish-powered. Commander Miles walked the plates as weld sparks hissed, her footfalls muffled by layers of still-cool ceramic. She reached the prow, where shipwrights were busy laser-etching the motto chosen by public vote. "We are the run-on sentence." Miles traced the freshly cut letters, laughter slipping out despite the ache behind her ribs. Resnick coughed nearby, wiped soot off his brow. "They wanted Earth remembers again," he mused, voice hoarse. But polling said history's moving too fast for reruns. "Good," Miles answered, watching first sunrise bleed through distant vent shafts. "Yesterday's roar fed us. Tomorrow needs new thunder." Ngorongoro supply flights kept coming, orbins clanging into forge hoppers even as Dominion reconnaissance closed the net. Mei Ling's Rangers took 3 more shield domes, lost 2 exosuits to nerve net webs, adapted by bolting ice auger bits to forearm gauntlets to pierce the web nodes. War as Berkolich. Drone footage of those hacks circulated on ConcordNet, swiftly spawning tutorials. How to turn a mining tool into an empire cutter. Downloads spiked across globes still under limited occupation. T-6 cycles. Dominion Fleet Night Glass entered Sol's Heliopause, stealth skins shimmering under solar tide. Veteran gunnery crews ran silent drills, calibrating for hypersonic rod delivery. On flagship Prevalitis, Commander Vetresh rehearsed the kinetic strike pattern thrice, triple-checking for slippage. He did not know that one of his sensor chiefs, an indentured laborer whose brother now mined Ngorongoro, had replaced a gravitic lens-focusing crystal with an identical twin micro-etched with Concord countercode. The lens would introduce a timing skew so slight it evaded diagnostics, until rods entered drop path and diverged by 12 degrees each, missing all primaries. The sabotage was a love letter no Dominion security audit would ever decode until too late. Sangre de Cristo bunkers. Miles addressed every available pilot inside the half-wired flight amphitheater, air reeking of ozone and cafeteria coffee. No bardic flourish, just facts and the quiet litany of what still needed doing. Then she unlocked a crate and passed around vintage O-type dog tags recovered from Leviathan wreckage, each tag buffed clean, ready for new names. "Their steel carried us this far," she said. "Wear it forward." A cadet barely 20 asked the question all eyes hid. "What if night glass lands harder than we can climb?" Miles answered by pointing to the cracks spidering the vault ceiling each time a hull core thrummed. "Then we build where the pieces fall." That's survival syntax. T-0 plus 41 minutes. Prevalitis's drop command fired. 3 silvery rods, each tungsten iridium, sheathed in ablative frost, slipped the clamps, aimed for Sangre de Cristo, Lighthouse Mesa, Hope Station 1. Microseconds later, skew glitch engaged, rods drifted degrees off. Mid-course correction thrusters fired, but Wong's quiet code injection dark-cyclicked them, burning fuel in futile spin. The weapons sailed wide, one burying itself harmlessly in Antarctic ice, the next punching a Pacific abyss, the third shearing a mountain far from any transmitters. Dominion captains watched primary targets still shining, comm chatter erupting confused. Way's lighthouse saw the near-miss flash, screamed all clear across civilian bands, and broadcast a single line, unbroken. On battered streets from Lahore to Lagos, crowds who had been braced for shockwaves instead heard that word echo, in the cheering cracked windows long ago spiderwebbed by other blasts. Fleet Night Glass shifted to Plan B. Full descent burn, ground assault. But the Heliopause now blazed with Concord jammers. Hope Station salvage crews had aimed their patchwork arrays sunward, rebounding Dominion targeting sweeps into noise. Liminal Rook launched from Sangre de Cristo under partial hull, reactors chugging but functional, Rook's prow still bare metal-kissed red in dawn. She rose, trailing a formation of gnats, X-mining drones welded with oversized thrusters, Mei Ling's ground crew donation. Rook had no main cannon yet, but she carried Juniper Module, a payload of 100,000 nanosail reflectors designed to scatter Dominion sensor fidelity into confetti. When Vetresh's battle's fear line tried to lock range, all they saw were a million bright echoes. And into that kaleidoscope roared the NGOR-boosted rail platforms Miles had hidden among Appalachian ridges, 20 ferromagnetic lances each the mass of a city bus, slamming into Prevalitus's shields from impossible angles. The flagship staggered, reactor wind spiking, sabotage lens finally melted under stress, blowing out target acquisition arrays. In the chaos, Rook swept close enough to slam docking spikes into Prevalitus's flank, disgorging ranger detachments armed with those improvised Iceauger gauntlets, now tuned for hull seams. Battlesphere corridors, once symbols of Dominion perfection, filled with the sound of humans hammering grammar lessons into alloy. By sunset, night glass was shards. Dominion command signals petered out amid static. Vice Praetor Cymox drafted resignation orders he would never send, the spire around him already swarmed by strike mobs of formerly subjugated species newly emboldened. Hope Station 1's gardeners cultivated their first kilo of orbital lettuce under true solar lamplight. They named a harvest Van's Leaf. Ngorongoro excavations reached the mother vein, element 6 shimmering gold-violet under flood lamps. Mei Ling stood at the crater rim as supply elevators hauled nodule crates skyward, her exosuit shoulders draped with a scavenged Dominion banner repainted into a field hospital tarp. She finally let herself breathe. Under Sangre de Cristo, Resnick shut down Core 3's stress test and listened to the forge quieten. For the first time in years, the mountain did not tremble. It felt like held breath becoming sigh. Commander Miles walked the new gantry of Liminal Rook's battered hull, palm resting on still-cool plating. Above, the Viennese maple's leaves brushed ventilation currents, the band of lattice metal woven round its trunk humming with content algorithmic purrs. Far beyond Luna, Kithra Edge Relay chirped, an unfamiliar handshake, not Dominion, not Concord. Way decrypted. It contained only coordinates and a stanza in rough, syntax-tangled English. To the planet that remembers storms, our dark sky just learned to sing. Could we trade verses? A new voice, another fledgling world hiding in shadows, now hearing echoes from Earth. Miles smiled, eyes stinging. She forwarded the ping to Lighthouse with open channel tag, reply in harmony. And the beacon's beam brightened, lengthened, carrying more than hope now, carrying invitation. Because Earth's grammar lesson for the cosmos had evolved. After the run-on sentence came the semicolon, the promise that stories, like people, refuse to end where tyrants place their dots. A low sun hung over the Sangre de Cristo snowfall like an ember cooling in a hearth, its orange light broken by a lattice of new launch gantries sprouting from the mountain's torn crown. The gantries looked improvised, girders scavenged from fallen Denver supertowers, elevator cages welded out of derelict subway frames, and yet the way they caught the sunrise gave them an almost ceremonial grace. As if the Rockies had decided to wear coronets of rust and promise at the same time. Flood lamps still burned along every catwalk because night shifts never stopped now. You could tell the hour by the hue of the weld arcs alone. Pale azure near midnight, searing mag-white toward dawn, subdued citron at mud change. When exhausted crews traded places without stepping clear of the sparks. Commander Regent Arden Miles took her coffee beside a stack of spent nanofiber spools that smelled of ozone and sugar dust. Someone had bribed the rigger teams with contraband churros again. She sipped, ignoring the grit of cold grounds, and let the hangar's industrial hum settle around her ribs. It was an odd comfort, this choir of compressors and servo rams, but it beat silence. Silence had belonged to the Dominion once, and she didn't intend to sign any part of it back over. Down on the forge floor, Chief Resnick was lecturing 3 cadet metallurgists about lattice pre-stress differentials, which translated, in Resnick's dialect, to hitting glowing billets with a smart hammer until the crystals aligned their obedience. Sparks snowed around them in slow spirals. Gravity buffers dialed shy of full to conserve core power and draped the tableau in a golden fog. Already the main hull of Liminal Frame 4 lay cradled on mag supports like a half-assembled whale skeleton, vertebral girders curving proud, ribs ready for plating. No one had officially named the ship yet, but rumors said schoolchildren in Nairobi were polling suggestions on the public mesh. Arden suspected the winner would be something uncomfortably earnest, like Aurora or Maple Wing. Her wristpad pinged. A priority feed from Lighthouse Control, tagged seed, com_C_0042. Another new coordinate set, another message from the dark corners beyond Seoul. The unknown senders, calling themselves Greywater, had grown bolder after the first handshake. This packet contained a compressed vid clip, heavy clouds over a wine-dark ocean, then a city of angular towers jutting like broken glass from tide mist, no obvious Dominion iconography. but burnt vehicle husks along the shoreline carried hull glyphs she vaguely recognized from Prevalitis wreck logs. Whoever Greywater were, they had fought the Empire too, or been fought by it, hard enough to inherit its debris. The clip ended on a single frame, a weather-stained mural of a human in a mag suit planting a sapling beneath alien moons. Beneath, scrawled in flaking paint, 3 words. We chase spring. Arden thumbed the ACK key and routed the packet to wait for translation, then headed for the external lift. A soft concussion rumbled through the deck plates, test core ignition for frame 2/Bishop reaching 95% spin. The mountain answered with its usual basalt purr, and somewhere above, the Viennese maple would be shivering leaves at the vibration. She made a mental note to check its water feed. The last quake had cracked a tertiary pipe and left the poor tree gasping until the pump crews patched it. A sky without pause. 12,000 kilometers over equator, Hope Station 1 drifted through an orbit thick with its own salvage fields. Against the black it resembled a shattered chandelier. Thousands of mirror shards, polished solar panels, spare hull plates, hung on filaments of spider wire, catching sunlight and bouncing it into the greenhouses that ringed the core habitat. What Dominion tacticians failed to understand when they targeted the station was that Hope 1 had no single vital organ. Blow out a module and refugees sealed the gap with tarp, rerouted air through a decommissioned cryotank, and named the patch after whoever first yelled, "Foam it, fast." A culture knitted itself in those scars, gnarled and irreverent. On this shift the greenhouse teams were shepherding Leviathan Sleeve, the crisp lettuce cultivar named after Vance's flagship, toward a third harvest. Giro Park, acting AG chief, knelt in micrograph to prod root mats while humming an old pop ballad. He startled when the net's peripheral speakers crackled to life with Way's smooth baritone. Greywater sends greetings and an open file share of seawater to power enzyme arrays. Estimate 31% efficiency over current hydrogen split. Cheers followed from every deck. More than seeds and songs now, the ring was passing tools around the dark like children trading flashlights beneath blankets. Giro cued a return ping, a time-lapse of seedlings unfurling set to a tinny harmonica loop, and attached a quick note. Swap your microalgae biofilter design. Keeps the sugar haze off fact filters. He fired it back down line and returned to pruning, whistling the same tune out of sync. Cartographers of dust. Ngorongoro crater had cooled enough that daytime winds chased dust devils across glassy slag. Excavation Stage 6 brought up vein clusters the size of houses, each chunk of Element 6 needing 3 mech lifters and 2 oversized parachutes to haul skyward. Colonel Mei Ling spent more time orchestrating traffic than firing shots these days, which should have felt like relief. Instead, it unnerved the veteran in her bones. Quiet ground meant loud sky was coming. The quiet broke when her forward percussion sonar picked unusual upticks under the southern caldera wall. Not Dominion shelling, wrong rhythm. She hiked over with a sensor rig and found rangers prying up hexagonal basalt columns they swore were hollow. X-rays confirmed. Inside lay nests of transparent eggs, each fist-sized, each thrumming faint biostatic. Indigenous? Dominion biolabs? None of the captured manuals spoke of crater fauna. May radioed Sangre de Cristo. Resnick whistled low. Could be geospores left by the mothership's shield anchors. They dumped all kinds of nanosoil to prep the terraform. Up or downside? She asked. Up, if we can form it. Down if it hatches hungry. Samples shipped out on the next or shuttle inside triple-sealed amnio jars. Science pods at Lighthouse would poke them, Miles figured. Meanwhile, May bracketed the nest site with sonic sentries tuned to rock marmot frequencies. If the spores woke and walked, she wanted early notice. The broken flagship. 2 light minutes off Venus, Dominion battles fear Prevalitis drifted in a tilt, inertial stabilizers dead. Its once perfect plating now pocked by mag lance bruises, the hole gaped in 2 places where Ranger auger crews had popped seams, jettisoned recyclers, and vented 15 decks of munitions to hard vacuum. Yet deep inside, among power conduits blinking in emergency violet, Commander Vetresh still held a command throne, albeit chained to survival pumps cobbled from spare coolant lines. Morale logs recorded mutiny risk Delta Plus. He edited them down himself, 1 thumbprint at a time, until the metrics lied enough to comfort middle command. Outside his viewport, the new human ship, Naked Hull Liminal Rook, glided around Prevalitis like a younger predator studying where to bite next. And bite it would. Vetresh recognized that prow silhouette now etched with thruster soot, half-built, half unstoppable, exactly the way the first Leviathan had looked in grainy Dominion footage archived after Dawnfire. He imagined how many more frames were forging in those mountain caverns and felt the first honest quiver of fear since Nightglass failed. He drafted a fallback, salvage Prevalitis' reactor core, pulse it into a Starwood slingshot, ride debris to a loyal sector, warn them humans were birthing Leviathans wholesale. But Bridge Astrotechs whispered of sabotage still eating targeting arrays. The ship could not steer precise. Steering imprecise meant riding a loaded gun without a trigger guard. He weighed pride against oblivion and finally toggled what remained of the diplomatic beacon. Prevalitis to Earth flag. My hull fails, my crew starve. Propose ceasefire, prisoner exchange for safe tow. The beacon pinged. Silence. Ping again. Silence stretching like a garrote. Then a single line returned, flagged from liminal Rook's comms relays, the line Miles herself typed after reading Way's reply in harmony memo. No more dots. Start a sentence. That Tresh reread 5 times until the lexical crypt filters coughed up context. Humans refused full stop. They wanted run-on. They offered unknown grammar, mercy shaped like obligation. In a cracked breath, he weighed whether an empire could afford dignity. In the next breath, he keyed in acceptance. Lighthouse eclipse. Way's analysts fed the beacon chatter into a predictive engine once derived from Dominion War probability code. The curve spat a spike. If Prevalitis surrendered publicly, subjugate sectors might calculate defection payoffs, domino rationality toppling command faster than any kinetic strike. They would need the broadcast global and raw, every stutter intact. But Lighthouse's primary dish was still patched with scrap after the near-miss rods. Broadcasting a battlesphere's capitulation might overload the buffer grids and blind the beacon for hours, an info blackout Dominion loyalists could exploit. Giro Park solved it accidentally while reconfiguring Hope Station's mirror lattice, split the anthem across the station's own solar flakes, bounce segments in mesh network form, let constellation geometry carry half the load. Way like the elegance, nodded, spun up protocols. Within 30 minutes, the surrender message pulsed through 2,000 micromirrors, each node singing a baritone phrase, "No more dots, no more dots," until every listening ear from Mercury mines to Mars typhoon domes felt the sentence finish inside their ribs. That night, the most pirated audio on Concord Net was not a song, but Vetresh's weary voice reading the articles of capitulation, followed by the quiet sob of some unseen Dominion officer. Remix artists layered it over percussion and wind chimes. School kids beatboxed the rhythm in lunch queues. Earth culture gnawed on empire until even defeat tasted like chorus. Under the maple. Late watch again. Arden Miles sat on a catwalk loft above the garden coil, legs dangling. The maple's leaves whispered against an air duct, lattice band faintly glowing where alien metal kissed bark. Below, 2 rangers on medical leave played chess on a crate lid, using spent fuel couplings and nuts for pieces. Every capture rang metallic off the steel decking. In the far corner, Resnick snored on a sling, welding mask still perched like a crow over his face. Another ping from Greywater arrived. Updated coordinates mapping a safe conduit through their local nebula, plus recipes for fermented kelp cakes. Tastes better than it sounds, the note promised. Way also telexed up an urgent that Giros V-leaf crops were surging. They'd have surplus within a week. Fresh greens for mountain crews, imagine. Oh, and by the way, lighthouse arrays were holding fine under distributed broadcast. Full downtime now postponed indefinitely. Miles closed the pad and stared up past grated skylights to where only stone existed. Somewhere beyond that stone lay a sky sprinting faster than wires could carry news. There were still Dominion warlords in the Perseid Belt, still dead cities that would never bloom, still spore eggs in Garangaro humming uncertain portents. But tonight the forge heat smelled of lettuce and clean ore. And that was enough water on the fire to make steam clouds of maybe tomorrow. She set her emptied mug on a beam, patted the maple trunk, and whispered the newest watchword past word of mouth since Vetresh surrendered. Keep running on. The leaves rustled in agreement, like parchment pages turning for the next clause, and in the foundry bays below, liminal Framefor's keel line sparked. First arc a thin blue needle stitching future to steel. Out beyond the plow line where Earth's new orbital yards were still nothing but dotted scaffold and hope scribbled in requisition ledgers, a string of navigation buoys flickered to life, one after another, as though invisible fingers were striking flints across the dark. In the control blister of liminal Rook, Lieutenant Sahara Ochoa watched their cascade march up her board. 12 green diamonds, then 20, mapping a curve all the way to the translunar Lagrange cradle that didn't yet officially exist. The buoys were Greywater's gift, each a loaf-sized crab of alloy and smartfoil that arrived in sealed drops, self-unfolding the moment they cleared customs. They cost nothing in hard credit. Greywater claimed to operate on a blunt economy called reciprocal breath, but the Concorde had responded with 3 full crates of Hope Station algae mesh and 40 terabytes of Lighthouse folk archives. Because humans couldn't simply accept miracles without paying forward. Ochoa toggled external optics. The nearest buoy spun slow, panels catching sunlight, and in its reflection she glimpsed a warped copy of Rook, prow patched with scavenged plates, dorsal rail slots still gaping like missing teeth. She chuckled. Every new friend was going to meet humanity dressed half in uniform and half in borrowed jackets. Somehow that felt correct. A little ragged, she murmured to the bridge's dim hum. Ragged is camouflage, answered Commander B-Tan from the tactical pit, not looking up from her sensor screen. Shine too bright and empires remember where to aim. The burrow ships. On the equatorial Atlantic, a cluster of converted oil platforms, now christened Reforge Delta, had begun lowering unfinished hull cylinders straight into saltwater caissons. The ocean made a poor dry dock, but seawater was a free radiation shield and plankton bloom kept corrosion crews busy high above the waterline. Burrow ships, the designers called this batch, squat freight hulls built to dive right through slipwake turbulence and seat themselves on asteroid cores, where they could hollow rock into factory caverns. The first names were whimsical Borrower 1 and Borrower 2, until someone pointed out the pun and the committee changed them to Sancho and Ariane, which stuck. Below Deck 6, welding robots sniffed for cracks while schoolchildren on field trip tours peered through viewports at showers of blue sparks. Field trip permission slips were the new currency of morale. Let a class watch steel fuse, and they'd return to their shelter towns raving about engines that could chew the moon. Which meant their parents volunteered for extra salvage hours, which meant Delta's logistics matrix found 3 more barges to scrap. Nightside Joint. Farther west, in what was once Wyoming coal country, a ramshackle settlement named Nightside Joint had sprung up around the crash scar of a Dominion courier frigate. Its airstrip was a straight mile of fused earth. Traders came for the frigate's hull composites, stayed for the black market stews, fuel core soup seasoned with sulfur mustard, and, astonishingly, basil flown in from Hope Station. Even Miles' aides admitted the chow was worth every micron of background radiation. Tonight a hush settled over the joint's corrugated alleys. The sky heaved with silent auroras, neon sheets of emerald and bruised purple that rioted across the stars. Old ranch hands muttered, sun's throwing hissy fits again, but the auroras weren't solar. They were bleed arcs from Dominion residual mines set to self-annihilate in low heliocentric orbit, a final spite move. The mines popped 300 kilometers above ground, seeding the magnetosphere with dancing ions. Mei Ling's forward scouts used the light to silhouette new shapes, half-sized Dominion corvettes tumbling derelict, maybe crewless, maybe booby-trapped. She requisitioned 1 skiff from Nightside salvagers, stuffed it with 4 volunteers and a tame AI in a V-ball named Peanut, and fired them after the wrecks. If the corvettes were intact enough, they'd drag them home. If not, they'd at least yank the warp injectors before the next raider gang noticed. The Spore Circle. Back at Garongaro, bio teams cracked the egg cluster. Under microscopes, the embryos resembled translucent cuttlefish wrapped around carbon quills. No toxins, no Dominion tag molecules, purely alien, but not engineered. A buried ecosystem the mothership's drills had ruptured. When the scientists piped greenhouse air into a test hive, the larvae produced tiny clicks that, after spectral mapping, matched no known communication. Then it in turn streamed lighthouse lullabies for background ambience. The larvae's clicking shifted, aligning to the song's rhythm like miniature metronomes. The phenomenon made the daily uplink and within hours became galaxy-wide sensation, Crater Choir. Children everywhere begged for plush cuddle things. Marketing boards drafted slogans, and Tilway quietly embargoed the story's commercial rights. Some miracles stay free, she told reporters. Still, Concord wasn't blind to opportunity.